Tell me about urgent systems interventions and why you're so passionate about
Well, I believe that we've done a lot of studying and a lot of talking, and we need to continue both of those things. However, we as a planet, we as people, we as folks in the climate and the space sector are very good at snapshots of systems. We currently have inadequate tools and therefore frameworks for charting a path for an action in very dynamic systems. I had somebody a few years ago ask me, well, if somebody was crazy enough to give you $100 billion for interventions on the planet, what would you do? And I'm like, well, first I would design a model so that we were looking at dynamic systems, because I think so often when you finally do get the resources after the long battle to get people's attention, we put it in the wrong place. We put it on a fixed intervention that makes sense on a graph 4 years ago. It doesn't show where the world will be and the layers of complexity. And the truth is, we have the computing to do it. But we're missing some of the interim tools. So I'm passionate about how do we get to those things, and more importantly, what actually needs to happen to change everything. We don't, sort of like voting, you don't need everybody to shift this way. It's a very few percent that change everything. And I think the same is in systems change.
We are joined today by Laura Ann Edwards, who is having an amazing career with multiple facets. Currently with NASA, she has her own company, Data Oasis. She is founder of SheCanHackIT.org. She's a resident at the Buckminster Fuller Institute. You are amazing, and you were just talking about going to where you need to be to get the money to get systems integrated where we're going to be a year from now, not a year ago. And it's that's always been a challenge, because the grant writing process, the way that money comes in, it takes time. You have to give a proposal, and then they want metrics on that proposal. Right. And the metrics on that proposal may not be valid a year, 2 years from now. I'm fascinated by the softwares that we have now, the Atlassians of the world, who are able to coordinate different groups of people together so that people can actually share what's new in a real-time atmosphere. And I think that that's just something that will serve us well going forward, if we actually can control the AI and not let it control us. Mm-hmm. So tell me about being a data-naut. Did you come up with that phrase?
No. So to clarify, I don't work for NASA. NASA does, as part of all of their budgets and their programs, they're mandated to have a series of robust outreach programs, public education programs, and one of them that I benefited from was being asked to join the NASA Data-Naut program, which ran actively for about 4 years. And it was an outreach globally for folks in different aspects of data, particularly our nerdy interest in space data and that as a public good. So most of the folks in the program are data scientists, properly so. There are a few artists, and then there are a few people like myself in between. And I describe myself as a data activist. Right? I've done my TED talk, on about the urgent issue to avoid the open data commons tragedy, and why federating data silos was so important to a common baseline, an apolitical common baseline for faster, more effective, more robust communication between scientists and policymakers and citizen scientists. Plus, most of the public pays for most research, so they should have access to it. That's a separate issue. Anyway, so my work in the open data arena got me invited to be a NASA Datanaut, and my lifelong interest in space suddenly had a happy home. And so that's the NASA Datanaut. It's a wonderful global community that I'm really proud and fortunate to be a part of. And we hope that it revives and has its place. And to your point earlier, the tools are getting so much more robust. Many of the things we talked about being able to do as a practicum in concert with the access to NASA experts and data sets, it's only gotten better. So it'd be fun it will be fun at some point to revisit it and be able to do even more with and for NASA and therefore the public around what all this amazing research data, because everybody hears about the rockets and the rovers, but there's all this life sciences stuff. There's so much more to what NASA has put research into, which is, beneficial to the world.
Any company that I've worked with in climate change mitigation has relied on NASA data,
Yeah.
going back to the 90s.
Yeah.
People everywhere should know the amazing work that they have done in furthering the communications with the tax dollars, of course, to everybody, not just the scientific community. And NASA.org is an amazing resource for the general population to get a better handle on what we're doing, why we're doing it, and hopefully where we're succeeding. There are so many interesting ways that we can mitigate climate change. Of course, we're not moving fast enough in any one of them.
Correct.
Which is bad, but we keep looking around the corner and saying, maybe this technology will do it. It's all the technologies together. And we have to throw money at all of them. Unfortunately, it's like a Manhattan Project, I would say, for people who are old enough to have seen the movie Oppenheimer.
And I guess I would say it's less a Manhattan Project than it is NASA for climate. Where's NASA won a space race and might have come out of geopolitical concerns, and yet it's been a remarkable structure to vastly accelerate and coalesce, including the competition and camaraderie around the world. I mean, never forget, we talk about data, the combination of now NASA data and ESA data, and then this wonderful upwelling of private companies that are involved in public-private data exchange. There's so much available that is, that's just, it would have been incomprehensible even 15 years ago that it was accessible to get.
It's a huge plus in this time that we're living through. When you're looking at blending complementary services, because this is basically your specialty, do you usually start with a what if or why not, and then work your way forward and backwards at the same time? How do you sketch that out in your mind?
I guess I think of, I try to reflect the way the human brain, or how we make sense of things. It takes an incredible amount of sense-making power to be able to step off the curb successfully across the street. And yet our tools have nowhere near that level of dynamic systems complexity. And so when I think of what needs to be combined, I think of what's already combined and trying, that there's a saying in sales, only sell people something that they already want to buy, they just don't know it yet. When I look at combining things like strategies around dual use technologies, I'm thinking of things that already have deep synergies and are heading toward each other, but it just might not have been revealed. So I'm not doing any massively genius, oh, this goes here and this. I'm good at seeing connections of things, but the truth is, if you could reveal the invisible lines between them, they were headed that way anyway. And so again, let's meet those orbits where they're headed.
Well, you're able to represent visually and in writing how to do this, though. that creates that's something that most people's synapses don't fire on your level. So I love that you're doing it, and I love that people are just so passionate about improving the outcomes. That should be everyone's goal in life, is to love someone and improve society's outcomes. In a perfect world, somewhere in the future, maybe we will get it. Tell me a little bit about how we're doing with getting women more involved in IT.
Well, in general, literacy in the world is massively upticked, and thank you mostly, I guess, to the penetration of smartphones, digital literacy. Even if folks don't know that they are using digital tools, they're functioning with it, and so much of the world's population has leapfrogged over. I don't need to code the app to use the thing on my phone to text. I have no idea. I mean, I do have some idea, but I don't really know how texting works, but I use it. And so I have a certain form of digital literacy as a user. And so so she can hack it is the idea of teaching just enough tech to do the thing you actually want. So I often wish that math and technology were taught like cooking, right? If I want to cook a frittata, I don't need to know everything about the history of egg dishes. I just need to know how many eggs I needed to do the next thing. And unfortunately, we don't teach math or tech in that same useful way. At some point in human evolution or societal evolution, we decided to make education separate from doing, and it's silly, and it's not serving us. So
it's not serving us as a society, but it's serving the people who have. And what you just described was obliterating the learning curve, which was a barrier to people around the world and women in general to getting into these fields. So I think that it's really fascinating that if we can give more women, because we've had interns and employees at our startup, the women are better than the men in certain ways because they will work through 3 tasks at a time, where men need to put things in individual buckets.
Well, I'm a very big believer in that. Use all the talent at the table,
Yep.
and some women are multitaskers and others are not, but everyone around in your company is likely to have talents. And then when we show up at the company, we tend to reward the extroverts, and we tend to reward companies and organizations and entities,
Sure.
just for scale and for efficiency, tend to fall into a few lanes of what kind of behaviors are trained and supported and rewarded. And so in general, and that's why I was starting with women, because when in doubt, pick women. It was the idea of She Can Hack It was to work on a model inspired by Startup Weekend, to teach just enough tech to allow and to experiment with what do at that point, when it was originally conceived of, what do young college graduate women in the United States need to become founders? What is making them take their ideation and think they have to partner with some guys? What is stopping them from pitching? What is stopping them from doing a bunch of things? And one of the things I realized is, if you can mock up the materials, if you can prototype that business, whether it's an app or this or that, quickly and easily without having to partner with anybody, including other women, but like just being able to move forward, to take the next step. Basically, there's not a cookbook. There's things that make you feel you can't get in. And so I think of it less of a STEM thing and more of a, what is it I'm actually trying to do? I have an idea. I'm not sure it's a business, but let me present it. Let me test it out. Right now, it's I either have to buy into that I'm a founder type or I have this certain career pattern, instead of just being able to casually try stuff like trying on a dress, right? It should not be so high stakes all the time to champion an idea. And so we sort of we have a pattern or a corollary to that. I would say in school now, kids do their presentations in PowerPoint or Keynote, right? And that was a learning curve of they don't even think about those things anymore. They just present in decks. Well,
Right.
we can take that next step as a populace, and be able to quickly pull together the wizards and tools to showcase an idea, for whatever it is, whatever kind of business or whatever kind of project, and it's getting easier all the time. And I think so it's important to bridge that digital divide, both for an entrepreneur pipeline. And so I when in doubt, start with who isn't in the room, who should be. And women are the biggest group not in the room at the level that they should be. People of color, indigenous, all kinds of folks, where it is not just a moral right, it is a human planetary survival thing. Why in the world are we leaving all that talent out of the room or off the table? And so that's unacceptable. So when in doubt, I try to logically pursue things through the lens of how do I bring more of those folks to the problem solving, to meet the challenges, again, back to the layered systems challenges that we're all facing. So I can be righteous and I can have my own opinions socially and politically about what's the right thing to do. I am ruthlessly pragmatic and trying to solve really big problems. And so I'm picking the best team, right? So my things are not because I'm such a good person. It's because I want us to win as a species and as a planet. And you don't win if you're not using all the talent in the lifeboat.
100%. I'm a huge proponent of Startup Weekend, and if anyone out there has a daughter or
That's
a young son or an indigenous
Yep.
community, Google it. There will be one within an hour and a half of you in the next 30, 90 days.
Remarkable person. I mean, I have nothing to do with it. I'm just inspired by it.
Oh, I've helped sponsor and I've also participated in one. It's just amazing. It's basically a startup space where a group of people come together and they work on each other's ideas and they compete with each other a little bit. But the whole secret is that you can make a deck, like you were saying, in Canva in half an hour. It would have taken 4 graphic designers a week 20 years ago. And you have to try on different things because we succeed as a species, we succeed as individuals by trying things, not succeeding, seeing what worked, building on it, making your pivots, working collaboratively. And this is everything that I feel that you're sharing with us today. And I'm just so excited to have you here. And what's up? What is going to be next? What's going to? We're not going to. We're just going to mitigate climate change. And do you think we have a timeline?
Yeah, well, I think everything is coming to peak. There was all the talk about the singularity. I believe that everything is coming to peak turning points in the next 30 years. Those of us who will live through the next 30 years, and certainly the people who will live beyond. And I think that is a radical layering of transformative systems change. So climate, space, biotech, AI, the geopolitics, and the two sides of universal connectivity. Right? There's the one part that brings 8 billion people online, and then there's the other part that says you can watch 8 billion people. But those 6 systems are all happening at the same time. And to a field, we tend to talk about them one at a time. We talk about climate, which is a big thing and really complicated, but we can't wrap our minds around the fact that it's being affected by space, And both are being affected by biotech, and everything's affected by AI. And what does that look like? And what are the opportunities? So again, picture, I often use the metaphor of jump rope, right? You see, when you see the videos of people jumping into a very complicated multi-rope thing, can begin to understand that that's what our brain does to cross the street. But that's not how we make policy. And again, we take snapshots of dynamic things and then we forget to layer. And part of it is the tools haven't caught up, but we're close. So something that I worked on, you mentioned the residency at the Design Science Studio for Buckminster Fuller Institute and Hab Ritual. The prototype that I worked on there was about stepping into an immersive data environment. But the reason to be in a spatial environment, because that's how our brains imagine and make sense of things. We're not linear thinkers, no matter how much of a male persona, single track you talk about. We really are not. We don't think the way software hierarchies pull things down. We are scat nonlinear brains, and we think spatially, which is why there's so much of a response to visual stimulus. But we don't need seeing to be spatial. And so the idea of how can we do it in our science fiction movies. There's always some sort of holographic cool thing that doesn't exist in real life.
And then we invent it.
That's right. And so, yeah, so that I have, anybody out there want to work with me on the MVP of this Dataverse holodeck, give me a call. But the idea is to be able to step inside of dynamic data and turn on and off layers of systems complexity, because our brain does incredible sense making that no computing has ever come close to.
Not even close.
Not even.
Now, I would like to suggest that if people want to play 5-dimensional chess with you, Laura, is LinkedIn the best way to do it?
Yeah. You message me on LinkedIn, message me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Twitter. I am a little bit political on Twitter, but I'm mostly science on Twitter. Well, I'm just saying, just fair warning. And that Twitter is Allura Bravo, and LinkedIn I use my full name because there are a few other Laura Edwards out there in the world. And yeah, by all means, find me if you're interested. I'll just throw out there. These days I am mostly focused on, for the purpose of systems intervention strategy and urgent systems, and I'm focused on on a tactical way can I help do that form nodes of essential advanced technology being deployed in the right places in that systems map. And what I'm coming up with, and it's just one strategy, so I'd love to hear other people's ideas on other things that we can do, and I can amplify and support. But what I'm focused on is helping rethink the climate challenge, right? All the existential things are true. It's also the world's and history's biggest market opportunity. And since we live in an era of market awareness, what does it look like for you individually, your company, your country, your region, to look at climate with fresh eyes as a market opportunity? And once you do that, what does it look like to go, okay, here's the opportunity, here's what that could be exercised at in my region or my company. And then the extra thought experiment of what does it look like to take what's right for us to do in climate, on the economics of climate, not just the other pieces, and then pair that with other sectors. So I'm working with others, or in concert with others around the world, to redefine the climate opportunity model. And then my sweet spot is really getting very granular about the synergies between climate, markets, and other sectors. So climate and space, that's where I spend most of my time. Climate and ag, climate and energy, climate and manufacturing, and climate and extraction. And so those are a way to accelerate deployment of essential elevated climate tech in a commercially feasible way that can help create these little nodes of essential systems intervention. Will be other models that will bring other layers, and I am not in any way saying it's the only solution. It's what I've come up with that I can wrap my mind around and going, okay, there's X number of pieces of things that have deep synergies between advanced space tech and evolving climate tech, or vice versa, the flow between them that helps both sectors be economically viable. And more importantly, it's essential nodes of systems change that can outrun the crushing Darwinian struggle of startups and companies, right? Like how do we keep them funded and doing the things that they should be doing versus separately operating in their silos? At least on some pieces, they can work together. And again, that model looks very different in the space sector than it does in the ag sector or the energy sector. The players, the dynamics, the markets are different, but the need or the opportunity is the same. And the outcome is super necessary for us as a planet.
And we all have these amazing ways that we can improve. But if the word doesn't get communicated to the scientific community and the general population, the mastermind effect will not occur. So that's what we're doing here today. And blessings for sharing your wisdom. It was such an honor to have you on the podcast. And we look forward to talking to you again somewhere in the future and watching society thrive.
Thanks, everybody.